Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, guys. As I mentioned, if you've got any questions, feel free to shout out. I think you might have to raise your hand now you've been muted, or wait till the end, and we can go through anything there. Just throwing together a few slides just to give you a bit of a taster of why I decided to move into the world of small business acquisition, what it's done for us, some of the common questions that we get asked, and some of the things that I think people often miss when they're trying to get into this space as well. So what I really like about mergers and acquisitions is on the screen right here. You know, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I actually forgot because I've done over 20 deals now over the last 5 years, 6 years, and forgot that buying a business, you jump all the growing pains of a startup. And as I say, I forgot that, and we started a new business 3 years ago, Alphagenics, and you do everything in a startup. You wear all the hats. You do the £10 tasks, the £100 tasks, the £1,000 tasks until your team grows. Whereas with acquisition, you can leapfrog all those growing pains at the very beginning. You hire a team, you acquire clients, you acquire suppliers, and you miss out a lot of those teething problems at the beginning. So I personally think small business acquisition is a great way to predict the future by actually creating it yourself. And of course, what we're doing here isn't anything new. We can mimic and model. And when we look at all of the other bigger companies out there, we can see that most of the big companies are acquisitive. So Facebook have completed 96 acquisitions. Louis Vuitton, Bernard Arnault, of course, is one of the three. I think they keep swapping places. Three most uh, has the most money in the world. And Louis Vuitton have done 44 acquisitions. Apple have done 114. Google leading the way there with over 200. Amazon over 110. Jeff Bezos, of course, only owns 16% of Amazon, but he still is up there in the top three richest people in the world. Elon Musk only owns, I think, 20% of Tesla, and they've done 12 acquisitions. So M&A isn't new. Most of the big companies do it, and all we're doing is doing it at a slightly smaller scale for now. Oh, gone the wrong way. So some of you will know me. I recognize some of the names on the screen, but for those of you that don't, I'll just quickly go into who I am and how I got started. So I'm a physiotherapist by background. I qualified in the 90s and I had three epiphanies during my business career. The first one was when I realized that it was pointless if I was learning about sports physiotherapy and that was all, because most of my patients went to work, they played sport maybe for an hour a week, and then they went to the pub. So my epiphany was actually I was better off learning about occupational health, which is what I did. And I set up my first business, which was in occupational health and well-being. The second epiphany came really quickly after that, and it was I could be the best physiotherapist, occupational ergonomist in the world. But if nobody knew who I was, then how would my business grow? So the epiphany was marketing. I really needed to understand sales and marketing. And that's where I threw myself for many years, learning about these things. But the third epiphany was the one where I realized you could actually grow way faster than any type of sales and marketing by acquiring another business. And that's where I focused for the last 6 years or so. And as I say, we've now done over 20 deals, and I've learned an awful lot of lessons along the way. And some of those I'm sure we'll get into today. Now, one thing I think is really important to bear in mind is you can't build a skyscraper on the foundations of a bungalow. A lot of people think they can go from never owning a business to owning a £500 million business. And whilst it might be possible to do the deal, I think it's important that you have to put a bit of work perhaps into yourself as well. And what I mean by that is I think health is the most important thing. When I think about all the people I look up to, I aspire to be like, none of them are less healthy than me. If you want to be successful at doing deals, you're likely going to be putting some time into this. And the healthier you are, the more energy you've got, the more focused you can be, the more likely you are, I think, to be successful. So if you have to focus on one area of your life, focus on health, because it brings everything else along as well. That's your wealth, that's your family, that's absolutely everything in your life. Now, one question to ask yourself when you're looking at small business acquisition is, what is your immediate goal? And this is something that I talk about a lot with the people that join my group and with the people that are coming to the summit. Because if your goal is short-term cash flow, you're likely going to have a different plan to if you're looking for a long-term significant event, significant exit. You can do both, but it's easier when you've got cash flow. When you've got cash flow coming in and it's covering all of your expenses, it gives you a bit more freedom where you can start looking at different things. So typically short-term cash flow you might get from a consultant for equity deal, for instance, or a growth partnership where you take a percentage of a business in exchange for cash flow and equity. And if you're looking for a long-term significant event and an exit, you're likely going to be doing a roll-up where you're going to bolt together several businesses and then sell for a much higher multiple than what you bought for. So let's say you buy 10 businesses, they're all doing, actually, I think I've got this on another slide, so I'll stop there and I'll come back to that example. Now, the next question I think to ask yourself, once you've decided whether you're looking for a short-term cash flow or a long-term exit, is what kind of business do you want? So what's in your buy box? Is it a specific sector or are you going to be sector agnostic? What areas are you knowledgeable about and what do you really enjoy? Are you looking for a lean team? Are you looking for a big team? Do you want to be a leader of men or do you want to have an AI business which only has one other employee? Are you going to be location independent or is that going to be a physical location? How far do you want to travel? Are you looking at deals in other countries or are you looking at businesses that are on your doorstep? These are all really good questions to ask yourself at the beginning so you can narrow down what you're looking for. Now, personally, I think it's a great place to start with a business that you understand. So something you're knowledgeable in or something you enjoy. And the reason for that is it's much easier to build rapport when you understand what you're talking about and you share a lot of things with the seller. So for me, most of our acquisitions have been in healthcare because I can talk about health all day. I've been doing it for 30 years. We often know similar people. We're able to have conversations in different healthcare businesses based on my experience. So if you're an accountant, look for an accountant. Or you might decide to be sector agnostic and focus on the finance element. So you can bring the finance skills to any business. Maybe you're a surfer and you want to look for a surfboard manufacturer or a surf shop, something like that. So decide if you want to be specific or sector agnostic, decide if it's something you love, something you're knowledgeable about, and then decide where you want that business to be and how far you're prepared to travel. This was a slide actually that I had in my head when I almost mentioned it a while ago. So if you're looking for a long-term exit, one of the things that many companies do, the larger companies out there, is they'll do a roll-up. So they're going to bolt together lots of smaller businesses and they play this game of arbitrage between buying at a lower multiple and selling at a higher multiple. So let's have a look at this example here. Let's say you buy a business and it's doing $1 million in revenue and it has 20% net profit. So you've got £200,000 of profit. Now, most small businesses in the developed world, so whether this is in dollars, pounds, Canadian dollars, Aussie dollars, they will typically go for a multiple of around about 2 to 3 if you've got 200,000 of net profit. The closer to $1 million of profit, the closer to a 5 times multiple. further away from a million of profit, the further away from a 5 times multiple. So for really easy maths, let's say you buy a business that's doing a million of revenue, 20% net profit at a 3 times multiple. So it's going to cost you £600,000. Now, let's say we do 10 of these. And again, for really simple maths, they're all exactly the same size, but of course that's really unlikely. So now we've got a 10 million revenue business with 2 million of net profit. Now, in all likelihood, we haven't got 2 million of net profit because we've got some synergies now. Let's say we've got one accountant, external accountant, not 10. We've got one admin function, not 10. We've got one IT supplier, not 10. So that net profit is likely to have crept up as we've cross-sold and got some synergies out of these businesses. So again, for super easy maths, let's say that net profit goes up to 25%. Now, we've got a 10 million revenue company with 2.5 million of net profit. We bought at a 3 times multiple, so it's cost us 6 million. A 2.5 million net profit business will not be sold for a 3 times net profit. It's likely to be sold for somewhere between a 6 and a 10. So let's stay conservative. Let's say it goes for a 6 times multiple, 6 times 2.5. We've got 15 million. So we've bolted together 10 businesses that cost us 6 million to buy, and it's worth 15 million. Even if we hadn't paid any of that debt off, we've got 9 million of profit just by playing this game of arbitrage between buying low and selling high. And this is just what the bigger businesses are doing and the private equity firms are doing, and we're just doing it at a smaller level. Private equity, larger trade buyers, larger businesses aren't really interested in businesses with less than 1 million of net profit because there's a lot of hassle there. You might have a high concentration of clients, a high concentration of suppliers. There might not be very many staff. So there's a lot of risk involved in these businesses. But I personally think the juice is worth a squeeze. And if you can bolt together some of these businesses and get scale, you can create a significant business, which then you can sell to a larger trade buyer or to private equity for a much bigger multiple than you initially purchased it for. Now, one question I often get asked at this point is if you're using lending, if you're using borrowing for this, will I have to give a personal guarantee? Personally, I have given some personal guarantees over the years. In the UK now, even if you have an overdraft, you typically have to give one. On most business lending, we can split it into 2 types. So we have ABL, asset-backed lending, and this will usually come with a personal guarantee. But in my opinion, there isn't really a great deal of risk here because the personal guarantee is linked to an asset. So let's say worst case scenario, this business went under. The lender would just sell the assets, get their money back, and you're discharged from a personal guarantee. The reason there is a PG there is because let's say the business goes under, the last thing the lender wants is for you to just walk off scot-free, move abroad, do something else, because they need you to help get those invoices paid, or they need you to help them get that money in. So it's a useful tool, I think, there, which helps both parties. There's a lot more risk if you use cash flow loans or acquisition finance. So this is a loan predicated on the turnover and not an asset or the revenue if you're in the US. Now here you haven't got an asset that backs it, which means if the business goes under, you will likely be liable to pay that money back. So really important to understand if you are given personal guarantees, what you're actually getting yourself in for. In the US, you've got the SBA. The SBA will loan up to 5 million per person per industry, which is quite interesting. And they will ask for a personal guarantee, I think over, I can't remember whether it's either 200 or 500,000 personal guarantee kicks in. Under that, there isn't one. Now, I think another interesting thing, and this is something that was told to me by a mentor of mine. I've never tested this. I don't know if it's true, but I've been told that the SBA have never called in a personal guarantee because it is government backed. So if the business goes under, then they usually pay out. I had never checked that statistic, but it's something that was passed on to me a while back. Now, moving on to then, you've decided what kind of business you're looking for. You've decided that you're looking for a long-term significant event rather than cash flow. So you're looking at a bigger business, or it could be an equity deal. The most important thing I think for me is that these type of businesses, these smaller businesses, are going to be sold based on rapport. Bigger businesses tend to be more to do with the numbers. Smaller businesses, I think, a lot to do with rapport. Four of the businesses that we've acquired, we weren't the highest bidder, but we were seen as the safest pair of hands. And I think that came down to the rapport that we built up with the owner. So in the first meeting, I very rarely discuss finances. My goal is to go in with an intention rather than an agenda. And my intention is literally to find out as much as I can about that business, to find out what their pain points are, and to find out if there's a way for us to move forward and work together. So questions like, why did you start the business? Why are you selling? How many hours do you do? What are you going to do after you leave? What happens in the business when you go on holiday? These are all great questions that will actually give you a lot of information about that individual, but also the state of the business. Because if they started the business with the end in mind and it was going to be an exit, that could lend itself to talking about the numbers earlier rather than later. But if they started the business to make a difference to the world, if they started the business as a heart-led business where they were trying to really help people, they're probably going to be put off if you start pushing them on the numbers on that first occasion. How many hours do you do? This is a great question, and we fell foul of this in our very first acquisition. There were two owners, so in our heads, we replaced the two owners with two other physiotherapists. It was a physio business. And after we took over the business, we discovered that both of the owners were working about 60 hours each. So we actually should have replaced 3 salaries, not 2, when we were looking at our adjusted EBITDA. And another great question is what happens when you go on holiday? And a lot of small businesses will say, oh, I can't go on holiday without my laptop, which is a really good indicator, of course, that that's going to take some significant management when you take over that business. Ideally, we're looking for a business where that person can go on holiday for 2 or 3 months and the business still grows in their absence, because that's a really stable, well-run business. So, a couple of things just to finish off. According to society, wealth are cars, houses, a lavish lifestyle, and expensive clothes. But true wealth is good health, peace of mind, a life with options, and financial freedom. And personally, I think small business acquisition is a really, really good way to accelerate this. And to finish off, imperfect action beats perfect inaction. We've got this in massive letters on the wall in one of our warehouses in our medical supplies business, and we encourage everyone within our organization to take action. You can sit around, you can go on all the summits in the world, you can read all the books on small business acquisition, you can listen to podcasts every single day, but it will not be getting out there, having conversations with people, looking at sets of accounts. The more sets of accounts you look at, the easier it is to spot a good set, the easier it is to spot anomalies. And unless you're having conversations with business owners, I can guarantee you will not do a deal. So imperfect action beats perfect inaction. Get out there, make conversations, speak to people on LinkedIn, speak to people in your local environment, and go do deals. Have a great day, guys.